Richard Feynman mastered quantum physics, learned to crack safes, became fluent in Portuguese, and taught himself biology, all while holding down a full-time job at Los Alamos. His secret wasn't working longer hours than everyone else. It was a 20-minute daily practice that compounded into world-class expertise. And you can use the exact same system starting today. Here's what nobody tells you about mastery. It's not the people who study for 8 hours on Saturday who become experts. It's the people who study for 20 focused minutes every single day. Why? Because your brain doesn't build expertise through marathon sessions. It builds it through consistent repetition over time. If you're trying to master a skill by cramming on weekends, you're fighting against how your neurology actually works. You're essentially trying to build muscle by lifting weights once a week for 5 hours instead of training 20 minutes daily. It doesn't work. Your competitors who practice daily, even briefly, will lap you within 3 months. The gap between where you are and where you could be isn't about talent. It's about understanding how mastery actually forms. Feynman discovered this principle while learning to play the bongos. He couldn't dedicate hours each day. He was too busy with physics research. But he noticed that musicians who practiced 20 minutes every morning improved faster than those who practiced for 3 hours on Sundays. He applied this insight to everything: physics, languages, lockpicking, art. 20 minutes of focused practice, repeated daily, created what he called compound understanding, each session building on the last, with sleep in between to consolidate the learning. This wasn't theory, it was neuroscience. Let me break down the Feynman 20-minute mastery system step by step. The science, why 20 minutes is perfect. Your brain has a learning limit called cognitive load capacity. After about 20-25 minutes of focused learning on a new subject, your retention starts dropping dramatically. Studies at MIT found that students absorb 95% of material in the first 20 minutes, but only 40% of material presented after minute 30. Feynman understood this intuitively. He'd study quantum electrodynamics for exactly 20 minutes each morning before breakfast. Not 19 minutes, not 25. 20 minutes of complete focus. Then he'd stop, even if he was in the middle of something interesting. Why? Stop when you're engaged? Because that's when consolidation happens. When you stop while still interested, your brain continues processing the information subconsciously. You've probably experienced this. You stop working on a problem, take a shower, and suddenly the solution appears. That's consolidation. But here's the crucial part. This only works with daily repetition. Your brain needs 6 or 8 hours between learning sessions to move information from short-term to long-term memory. Daily practice means you're always building on a solid foundation. Weekly practice means you're rebuilding the foundation each time. The Feynman 20-minute framework. Feynman's sessions followed a specific structure. He didn't just study for 20 minutes. He engineered each minute for maximum retention. Minutes, 1 to 3. Recall, don't review. Feynman never started a session by looking at his notes from yesterday. Instead, he'd spend the first 3 minutes trying to recall what he learned yesterday without any help. He'd sit at his desk, eyes closed, and reconstruct yesterday's lesson entirely from memory. This forced recall is the single most powerful learning technique in neuroscience. It's called retrieval practice, and research shows it's 300% more effective than rereading. Most people do the opposite. They start each session by reviewing yesterday's notes. This feels productive, but produces weak learning. You're using recognition, seeing familiar information, instead of recall, pulling information from memory. Recognition is easy. Recall is hard. Hard is what builds expertise. Try this. Tomorrow, before studying anything new, spend 3 minutes writing down everything you remember from today's learning. No peeking. The struggle to remember is what matters. Minutes 4 to 8. Learn one new concept. Notice one concept. Not an entire chapter. not a whole topic. One specific, focused concept. When Feynman was learning biology, he didn't try to study cells in a session. He'd focus on one specific process. How do mitochondria produce ATP? That's it. 20 minutes. One concept, deep understanding. This focused approach does three things. First, it prevents cognitive overload. Your working memory can only hold about 4 chunks of information at once. When you try to learn too much, nothing sticks. Second, it creates deep encoding. Instead of shallow knowledge about many things, you build expert-level understanding of one thing. Mastery is built one deep concept at a time, not through surface-level coverage of many concepts. Third, it makes practice possible. You can't practice biology. You can practice explaining ATP production. Specific practice creates specific expertise. Minutes 90 to 15. Active application. This is where Feynman separated himself from everyone else. He never just learned concepts, he immediately applied them. If he learned a new physics principle, he'd spend these minutes working through a problem that required that principle. Not a textbook problem someone else created, a problem he invented himself. For example, after learning about quantum tunneling, the concept that particles can pass through barriers, he asked himself, could this explain how enzymes work in biology? He spent 15 minutes exploring that question, even though it wasn't directly related to his research. This cross-domain application is what built his legendary creativity. He wasn't just memorizing physics, he was building mental models that applied everywhere. You can do this with any skill. Learning a language? Spend these minutes writing a short paragraph using today's new vocabulary. Learning to code? Write a small function that uses today's concept. Learning business strategy? Apply today's framework to a real company. The application must be generative. You must create something, not just repeat what you saw. Minutes 16 to 18. The Feynman explanation test. Feynman would spend these minutes explaining today's concept out loud in the simplest possible terms. He'd literally talk to himself, pretending to teach a curious 12-year-old. Okay, so mitochondria are like tiny power plants inside cells. They take in fuel, that's glucose from food, and they use a process kind of like a water wheel to create energy packets called ATP. The cell uses these ATP packets like batteries to power everything it does. If he couldn't explain it simply, he'd identify exactly where his understanding broke down. That gap became tomorrow's focus. This daily explanation practice did something profound. It transformed him from someone who could follow explanations to someone who could create them. That's the difference between competence and mastery. Minutes 19 to 20. Tomorrow's question. Feynman always ended each session by writing one specific question for tomorrow. Not a vague goal like learn more about biology. A precise, answerable question. How does the electron transport chain create the proton gradient? This did two things. First, it gave his subconscious something to work on overnight. He'd often wake up with insights about yesterday's question. Second, it eliminated decision fatigue. When tomorrow's session started, he didn't waste time figuring out what to study. He already knew. This removed friction and made daily practice effortless. The compound effect. Here's where this gets powerful. 20 minutes doesn't sound like much. But let's do the math. 20 minutes daily, 140 minutes per week, 10 hours per month, 120 hours per year. 2 hours of focused, structured practice is enough to reach an intermediate level in almost any skill. In 3 years, 360 hours, you'll be in the top 5% of practitioners. In 5 years, 600 hours, you're approaching expert level. Feynman learned to speak conversational Portuguese in 8 months using this method. 20 minutes daily of structured practice, recall, Learn one phrase pattern, apply it in written sentences, explain the grammar rule simply, write tomorrow's question. 8 months. 4,800 minutes. From zero to conversational. Compare this to someone who studies Portuguese for an hour on Sundays. That's 52 hours per year versus 120 hours. They're practicing less than half as much and doing it in a neurologically inefficient way. After 8 months, they'll still be struggling with basic phrases. Making it stick. The daily ritual. Feynman practiced at 7 a.m. every single day, not because morning is magical, but because consistency is. Choose your time. Make it non-negotiable. Feynman had a rule. If I skip today, I have to do 40 minutes tomorrow. That 2x penalty meant he never skipped. The penalty was worse than just doing the 20 minutes. Protect these 20 minutes like a meeting with your most important client, because it is. You're meeting with the future expert version of yourself. Common mistakes that kill progress. Mistake. But 1. Studying for longer to make up for missed days. This breaks the consolidation pattern. 20 minutes daily beats 3 hours weekly, always. Mistake number 2. Multitasking during the 20 minutes. If you're checking your phone or listening to music, you're not building expertise. You're wasting time. Feynman would unplug his phone and close his office door. Mistake number 3, not tracking progress. Feynman kept a simple log. Date, concept studied, question for tomorrow. This log became a roadmap of his growing expertise and a motivation tool when progress felt slow. Mistake number 4, picking too broad a subject. Learn physics is too broad. Understand quantum tunneling is perfect. Narrow your focus to accelerate mastery. Here's what Feynman understood that most people never realize. Mastery isn't about talent or time. It's about structure and consistency. 20 minutes of structured daily practice will always beat 5 hours of unfocused weekend cramming. Always. The person who practices daily for a year will leave you in the dust even if you spent more total hours. Why? Because their brain is building on a foundation that consolidates every night. Yours is rebuilding the same foundation every week. One is compound interest. The other is starting from zero repeatedly. The choice is obvious. Starting tomorrow morning, commit to 20 minutes. Pick one specific skill or subject. Follow Feynman's framework. Recall. Learn one concept, apply it, explain it simply, write tomorrow's question. Do this for 30 days straight and watch what happens. Write in the comments what skill you're committing to master. Subscribe for more practical systems that actually work. Remember, 20 minutes daily will change your life. 5 hours weekly won't.